Welcome to episode 328 of the Working Fans Podcast, where we are going to be talking 2025 in professional wrestling. So please, if you haven't, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, and check us over on Patreon, patreon.com/Working Fans Podcast. And all for the month of December, we've been giving away free 2-month memberships. That's going away at the end of December. So you've got not much time left to take us up on this offer. The code is going to be in the description. So if you want to check out our Patreon, get ahead of 2026 when everybody is going to be joining, do it now. But Dave, we are talking the year in wrestling. Usually I've got what our predictions were, but I'm going to cut that in post. And we're going to be talking about the best and some of the worst in wrestling. So let's just start right at the top. Male Wrestler of the Year. Who made the top of your list?
I went Cody Rhodes again. Because Cody went in as champion, and he lost it at Mania, but then he came back, won it at SummerSlam, and as of to date, I can't see unless something shocking happens. We're recording this December 12th, day before Saturday's Minute. So his title's not on the line against Open Femi. So unless something shocking happens, Cody will be the man at least into the Royal Rumble, I would imagine. AEW, Hangman Page had a great run this year, but he lost the title as of, we're getting rid of this. So really that's kind of what it came down to me was Hangman Page and Cody. Seth Rollins had a decent run going there for a while, but he got injured and taken out. Thought about going Mike Santana because of his journey, but unfortunately, Tina ended up cutting that kind of short. And this is where I just ran into an issue this year with this, is that there wasn't anybody just consistently at top for the whole year in their top promotion. So I went with Cody because I felt like, he's still the guy right now.
Cody's not a bad pick. When I was trying to think of somebody for AEW, I should have thought of Hangman. I was thinking of Moxley because of all this talk about Moxley and, leaving the Death Riders or possibly being kicked out. My pick, though, had to go John Cena one last time. It's been like the story of the year. He hasn't done a ton of dates, but I feel like he's been kind of that subject hanging over WWE all year. Different points have been about that retirement. Cody Rhodes is a good pick, too. He was on top of his game, lost that title, got it back. He is that, top baby face for the company, so not a bad pick. But I had to go Cena. I think it's also because, as we're recording, his last match is tomorrow, and he's just been the front of my mind in wrestling a lot of this year. Female Wrestler of the Year. For me, I got to say it was Mercedes Moné, and that's funny because that's also going to come up in a category later. But I think she had a huge year. Her run in AEW this year kind of stood out more than any woman's in WWE. And of course, you're going to mention a lady in WWE that I'm going to be like, how did I forget about that? But I had to pick Mercedes for this one.
I'm not. I'm going to mention Mercedes. I'm with you 100% on this. Mercedes won a consistency. She had most of those titles at the beginning of the year, and she added more titles by the end of the year. And she was consistently at the top. Although she didn't win the AEW Women's Champion, Toni Storm was Women's Champion for most of the year. Then Statlander got it. But Mercedes was near the top and consistently near the top the whole year. And
that's a shame that I didn't consider Statlander when she won that women's title, and she had that slow and steady climb up there.
And there was some great women's wrestlers in AEW had good years. Tiffany Stratton did well in the beginning. Jade's on top now. Rhea Ripley is always near the top. But it's actually the argument probably should have been Stephanie Vaquer. That's one I could have went with there, who had a breakout year, so much success in NXT, then, won that battle royal, and now, the women's champion on Raw. You could definitely argue Stephanie might have been the right choice too, but I went Mercedes.
Yeah, Stephanie's not another bad pick. That's another one I'm kind of sad I didn't think of. Honorary mentioned Bayley because of that women's conference she had. And she consistently, stayed in WWE. I mentioned that, and then I'm like, she hasn't really been featured as big as she could be.
She's but you know what she is to me? People might get mad at this comparison, but she's the double A of like women's wrestling to me. You know, she's that consistent top performer, and she can have a great match with almost anybody, can be in any kind of storyline. Like, she's good. She's always good, and I think that's why she's someone that's going to pop in your head, because you see what she does behind the scenes and all that too. But yes, in terms of character, they probably didn't feature as well as they could have this year.
Here's a category I think both of us kind of got stuck on a little bit, mainly because tag team wrestling just it's not what it once was. So it's like when you look back at the year, sometimes when you think of tag teams, it's hard to say what stuck out. So I'm interested. Who did you end up putting in this position?
Tag teams in WWE were all over the place. You know, we had the War Raiders for a little bit. We had the New Days on top for a little bit, you know, and then in AEW, I thought FTR are the champs now, but they just got the titles back now. So it was hard. And then, you know, I said, well, what about the women? And although the women's tag teams, I think, are getting more consistent, I didn't feel we were quite there this year, although it was close. Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss were almost going to be my pick. You know, but they just lost to the Kabuki Warriors, who just have it. So ultimately, I went with a team who just lost the tag titles as well, and that was Brodino. All right, Brody King, Bandito. I thought they had a great year as a tag team for a thrown-together tag team, and they were AEW champs, tag champs, and I just thought, given the year where we just didn't have a lot of consistency, they stood out just a little bit more to me.
That is a solid pick because there was such... They felt like a thrown together team at first, but then the more they teamed, it felt like they were really gaining momentum. And God, they were really the big team of this year. I went with Javon Evans and Leon Slater just because of the excitement of it. It is a later in the year tag team, but when tag teams are all over the place, sometimes that Hail Mary at the end of the year is what's gonna make it. I picked them because, you know, they're wrestling this weekend. They've been, since we saw them team up, we've had the excitement for them. So that's why I gave them that. But Brodito, very solid choice.
Company of the year.
Breakout Wrestler of the Year. A lot of people you can throw in this spot.
Okay, this was my easiest one for me, actually. I went Braun Breaker. All right. Braun Breaker to me went to that next level this year. And here's a guy who's going to be challenging CM Punk for the World Championship on the year anniversary of WWE being on Netflix this year. And he's the guy that ended up leading the Vision after all was said and done. So for me, Braun Breaker is a guy, if he's not a main event guy, he was just part of Survivor Series War Games, and he was on the winning team. He's right. He's about to be the main event guy in a couple months, I believe. So to me, it's Braun.
Right there with you. I picked Braun Breaker. You know, it was almost going to be my wrestler of the year, but I was thinking, like, even though he's been on the main roster for a little bit and, you know, he's destined for greatness, this felt like the first year where he took a giant step towards that. And, like, not quite a rookie, but, like, he definitely had the biggest year. You know, same with kind of, if you had to give runners up to this, who else do you think had like breakout years? Like, who was the breakout star in AEW this year?
Ooh, AEW? That's a good question. Because, you know, Javon Evans kind of came into mind a little bit, but even more than Javon was Leon Slater in TNA. I thought this was a great breakout year for him. But AEW, man, again, AEW's got such good wrestling right now in terms of like matches, and there's a lot of time. But did anybody break out truly this year?
Yeah, like I'm trying to think to the degree that Braun Breaker did, because like people in AEW have this slow, steady ascent. Like, you're kind of seeing it with Wheeler Yuta and Daniel Garcia more now, like getting featured as a team.
Kyle Fletcher.
Cut. Perfect pick.
Yeah, Kyle Fletcher would have been my guy in AEW for sure.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He's been good, but this is the year he almost seemed to go from like good to star. And that's been awesome to see.
I would say Takeshita is right there too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
IWGP champion this year. This is a big
company of the year.
So I would, you know, usually I always say WWE is the biggest company So I don't want to pick them. And then I think one year I did with AEW because creatively they were just on fire when they started, you know. But since WWE's gotten better, it's kind of hard to go against them. But AEW kind of closed that gap again a little bit this year, I felt, creative-wise. So in making a decision of this, people might think this is a cop-out, but I decided to go with what I've been talking about a lot when you go back to Male Wrestler of the Year, where I struggled. There was nobody consistent. Cody was the most consistent. Mercedes was the most consistent female, so I went with her. Braun. When I thought about consistency with a company this year, I thought about TNA. I thought about TNA having their largest gate in North America ever this year. TNA getting announced that they're going to AMC in January this year. Mike Santana's journey, TNA working with WWE, Joe Henry being on WrestleMania, the TNA Championship being on WrestleMania, the Knockouts Championship being in the Royal Rumble again this year. I thought TNA to me was consistently making steps to elevate themselves this year. So for that, this year they get my company of the year.
That's a really good pick. It's making me wish I had picked them. I went with AEW just because they've had like a really solid half a year at least of like good TV where there's very little complaints about it.
Yeah, I won't complain.
Pay-per-views have been on point. Storylines have been on point. So that's why I was thinking AEW because, you know, they kind of hit like they were rocky like a year ago or so where some of the stories weren't great. You know, we're always going to have the long pay-per-views, so that's not going to go away. But it feels like the stories going into the pay-per-views are bigger. The stories coming out of them are huge. But they're staying my pick, even though the case you made for TNA is right there. It's great to see where they've grown. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do in 2026 now that they have this TV deal. Will they TNA it up again? Or will they, you know, continue on the right path forward? And there's plenty of like other groups. Like, and this is going to sound like pandering, but we got to give our shout outs to New Heights Wrestling and Outcast Wrestling Revolution. Outcast Wrestling Revolution, one of the best little independents in Connecticut. If you're in the Eastern Connecticut area, check out their shows. Let's start filling up Ledyard Middle School. They've got a big match coming up next year with that ladder match between Peter Gianni and Jeremy Lacroix. They bring in so many great wrestlers. Cindy and Lou are just great people, and we like seeing what they've built over there. And New Heights Wrestling, they keep pressing on. Their 18th anniversary show is coming up. A lot of big matches on that.
Here.
We're going to go 2 more positive categories, and then we're dipping into the negative. PLE Pay-Per-View of the Year.
WWE Elimination Chamber. This was where John Cena turned heel. And whether you like the heel turn or not, this probably had more people talking than anything else in wrestling at the time. It felt like a lifetime ago now, but if you think about it initially, The Rock, you know, John Cena turning heel, Travis Scott being involved, even that initially, you know, it was wild. It was wild how they beat up Cody, Cena winning at that Elimination Chamber, Jade coming back earlier in the night and beating up Naomi at the time, you know, and just
it's funny the path that heel turn took too, where they stuck with it for a while and then it was abandoned, and then like, you know, Rock and Travis Scott haven't been seen since. I don't think Travis Scott's ever coming back.
Doesn't sound like it. That guy's left. But I mean, that initial pay-per-view did get a lot of buzz, got people excited, and in a lot of ways overshadowed WrestleMania this year.
Yeah, I went with AEW Wrestle Dream.
Okay.
I really liked it. It was the one pay-per-view that really clicked for me, that even though it was long, a lot of great matches on it, didn't necessarily feel as long because of the stories going in. And it might be a recency bias because you bring up Elimination Chamber. That's a really good pick because of how monumental it was. But I feel like AEW Wrestle Dream this year was when I kind of looked at AEW and I'm like, they're going to do all right. Like, forget all this noise about what people don't like about them. You know, maybe what they're doing wrong. Wrestle Dream is what AEW did right, I think.
There you go. Yeah.
Last positive Category of the year, storyline of the year. I feel like John Cena's got to be up there, but take the John Cena storyline out of it. What popped you this year?
I had Cena, but I had Cena in both. I had the Cena heel turn as the best storyline going, and I had Cena heel turn as the worst storyline going. I mean, not to jump ahead, but ultimately I thought they didn't handle the heel turn very well. But the initial shock of the heel turn was the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. It had the buzz going.
The fact that we were even getting it was wild at first.
Mm-hmm. So to me, it was kind of like an NWO thing. The NWO was the best thing in wrestling at one point, but ended up being probably the worst thing in WCW at one point when it just went on for too long. Ultimately, so that was kind of what ended up doing that. So you're jumping ahead. You heard my worst already too, but I kind of grouped those together.
It makes sense. I went with best storyline as the Vision.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liked seeing, it felt like putting the Vision together. You're making Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. You get them with Seth Rollins. It had all this intrigue mid-year, like before Rollins got hurt. But to me, it was putting together that great team and almost using it as the vehicle for Braun Breaker to become an even bigger star than he was already going to be. So I thought you can't get much bigger than that. And since you've given us your worst storyline of the year, we're going to get right into the negative. I went with the Mercedes belt collector because even though it was big, we talked the other week about how it doesn't feel big. It feels like a copy of a copy. It kind of feels forced in a way. She's already a good wrestler. Like, we don't necessarily need to pile on these belts. As we're recording this, it was, she's lost a couple belts.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're starting to see the start of the decline. So maybe the decline is where this story is going to come back around. But I just didn't feel like the belt collector was, big enough to grip like a lot of people in wrestling. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are AEW fans out there that are all about the belt collector. If I'm wrong about this, Mercedes, let us know in the comments. But I've got to go with that as the worst storyline of the year. Worst pay-per-view of the year. I'm going to go with WrestlePalooza because, one, I didn't watch it. It was the surprise debut of WWE on ESPN. It supposedly led to bad feelings from ESPN not, liking the response to it. That's kind of why I went with that. It just feels like that was the start of what's looking like it's going to be like a negative trend for WWE. What did you go with for worst pay-per-view?
I went with Survivor Series because even though I didn't hate Survivor Series, I thought it was the most uneventful pay-per-view. Other than Dom and Liv getting back together and Dom winning their kind of title, which I thought was the bright spot. And I thought there was some solid matches, but overall, I just thought it was the most uneventful. But I'll say this is a compliment to everybody in wrestling this year. I didn't really hate any pay-per-views or PLEs this year. I didn't hate anything. I thought they were either good, great, or okay. This was one of those okay ones. By the way, getting back to best pay-per-views and PLEs, just one I thought of, WWE's Women's Evolution returned this year. That was a fun one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Another standout. And it's almost a shame we didn't think about that till the end here.
Yeah, yes.
Worst news of the year.
I'm going to go with two things. The passing of Hulk Hogan as the character of our childhood and a lot of wrestlers, that really ending that 80s era of wrestling. When you think of Rowdy Piper's already passed away and, everybody in that main event at WrestleMania, Hogan, Mr. Wonderful, Rowdy Piper. Mr. T is still alive. It's like, that's wild. You know what I mean? And Mr. T is the one who's still hanging on. So that I thought was, was one of the negative things happening out of wrestling. And basically anything involving Vince, because there was no good news. If we heard a storyline, not a storyline, but a news item coming out with Vince McMahon involved, it was generally not going to be done. It was not well. It was not a good thing coming our way this year as wrestling fans.
No, and I had to go with the WWE to ESPN. Just putting aside how, ESPN supposedly feels about this, I'm coming at it from a customer standpoint where I'm a fan of WWE, but now because I don't have this ESPN app, I'm missing out on these premium live events. And to as somebody that enjoys the product, to be kind of kept out, cost prohibitively, to me, that's a negative, especially when they've been on so many other services and it's just one more streaming service. And I'm wondering how it's going to be going into 2026. We hear how Freddie Prinze says ESPN's not happy. WWE says ESPN is fine. So it's kind of seeing how that plays out. But that's just been the negative I thought of this year.
Mm-hmm. Let's see that.
And I meant to come up with a list of wrestlers that died this year. But it's interesting. You brought up Hulk Hogan, former guest of the show, Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal passed away.
Yes.
This might not be a bad thing to pull up a list of. Any other big wrestling things stand out for you in 2025?
I mean, we talked about John Cena's heel and face turn, or turn back to face turn. But I mean, I think that obviously him retiring is probably one of the biggest things that's happening in 2025. That's the biggest thing that's happened in 2025.
All right, so I just got a quick list here. Some big names we lost this year. Sabu.
Yep.
Gran Hamada, big across the world. Steve McMichael. Black Bart.
Black Bart, that's right.
Vinnie Barry wrote the Black Bart book. Hulk Hogan this year. A lot of names lost. But, guys, that's... we kind of ended on a little bit of a down note here, but that's 2025. We want to say, happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah. And next week is going to be next year. So we're going to be kicking off 2026 huge with some predictions. Right now, for everybody on the YouTube, you're going to get a commercial, and then we're going to come back with a little bonus Patreon talk. And then we got wrestling business we got to attend to.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.